Hello students, here we meet again through this online class. Now today I will quickly go over chapter 4, that is early stages of collective action. Now in the first part of the chapter we shall study about the revolt of 1857. Now by this time, you all must have been acquainted with this topic. This topic is very familiar with you all. This will be a revision for you all. Talking about revolt of 1857, now the period from 1757 to 1857, that is 100 years, the discontented Indians, they revolted against the British many times, several times. According to one estimate, it is said that they revolted nearly 54 times. But all these revolts, they were local in nature. So it became easy for the Britishers to suppress the revolt. But the revolt of 1857, it was a mighty one, big one. And it became very difficult for the Britishers to suppress it. Before going further, we shall first discuss about the causes of the revolt of 1857. Now, the foremost cause, that is, one of the major causes of the revolt of 1857 was economic exploitation. Now, all the high posts, high ranks in the army were reserved for the Britishers. And even the salary given to the Indian soldiers, sepoys, were very nominal. It was very less. So, what the Indian sepoys felt was that it was because of them that the British, that the English had become the paramount power in India, so they deserved a better pay. The next cause was the food that was given to the sepoys was not so good, and there was no social relation between the Britishers and the sepoys and the Indians. The gap was so much that the Indians felt that they were aliens in their own land. So much so, the exploitation and torture faced by them created hatred in the minds of the Indians towards the British. Now, there were several religious causes of the revolt of 1857. Like for instance, in those days, the British, on behalf of them, they sent the sepoys to fight battles. So the sepoys, they had to cross rivers, seas in order to reach those places. Now, according to the sepoys, they felt that crossing the rivers went against their religion. It was against their religion. So, these were some of the reasons of the revolt of 1857. Now, what was the immediate cause of the revolt of 1857? Now, you must have heard about the Enfield rifle. Now, what was it? It was a rifle, the cartridge of which was greased with the fat of pig and beef. And the sepoy, before firing, they had to pull the cartridge with their mouth. And both the Hindu and the Muslim sepoys thought that the grease cartridge which they had to bite, it went against their religion, because both Hindus, they don't take beef, and Muslims, they don't take pig. So these were the reasons. Now, regarding the area, where did it spread? Kaka boyo, Banaravanda, it spread to Oudh, Rohilkhand, Jhansi, Gwalior. These were some of the places. And the leaders of the revolt of 1857, as you all already know, were Rani of Jhansi, Rani Lakshmi Bai, Kunwar Singh, Tatya Tope, Nana Sahib. They were some of the leaders. But now, how did it start? Now, the revolt of 1857 is also called the Sepoy Mutiny. Now, why is it called the Sepoy Mutiny? Is because it started from the Sepoys. It was the Sepoys who began the mutiny. Now, you must have heard about Mangal Pandey. He was a Sepoy in the Bengal regiment. Now, it was he who shot fire at a European officer on 29th of March 1857. Now, orders were given to arrest him, but the orders were disobeyed. Later, Mangal Pandey, along with those who disobeyed the orders, were arrested and hanged. Now, this was how the revolt of 1857 started, and with this, several army sepoys from the army establishments, they started revolting, like for instance Ambala, Lucknow. And on 10th May, it was the sepoys of the Meerut, they broke out into rebellion, and this was how the revolt of 1857 started. But here, the revolt, the rebels, they captured Delhi and declared Bahadur Shah II, who was the Mughal emperor, the then Mughal emperor, and declared him, the rebels declared Bahadur Shah II the emperor of India. Now, this revolt of 1857, despite all these efforts, these fights, it was a failure. Now, several causes attributed to its failure. One of the main cause was the lack of leadership. Now, the leaders, they were not that able, or as compared to the British generals, they were not so superior. British generals were far superior than the rebels. Now, the second reason for the failure was the lack of coordination and planning. Now, we have seen leaders like Rani Lakshmi Bai, Kunwar Singh, Nana Sahib, Tatya Tope, but these leaders, they fought in their respective areas only. They did not have a planning. They did not unite to plan, to make a plan. They fought in their own way in their respective areas. Now, the next was lack of support of the middle class intelligentsia, and lastly, one of the reasons may be the British Army were far better equipped than the Indians. Now, we'll talk about the characteristics. Now, as I already told you, that this revolt of 1857 is also called the Sepoy Mutiny, like Sepoy Mutiny pani bhanincha. But we find, though it was started by the sepoys, it was soon followed by the masses. In many places, we find people revolting even before the sepoys with ordinary weapons. So we cannot limit this to be called a sepoy mutiny only. The next characteristics we can say is the rebels, they showed tremendous courage, bravery. Now, though the British wanted to create differences between the Hindus and the Muslims, yet both of them, they fought shoulder to shoulder against the British. Now, regarding the nature of the revolt, now this is a very contentious issue and a debatable issue. Now, there are various opinions regarding the nature of the revolt of 1857. Some say it is a mutiny, while some say it is a war of Indian independence. Now, the old school of historians, they do not think it is a war of Indian independence. Why? According to them, there was no definite political ideal before the rebels. Though the expulsion of the British was their immediate goal, yet they did not have a coordinated plan to establish a permanent, independent government in place of the British. Now, even Jawaharlal Nehru has talked about its feudal character. He said that there was no plan, no coordination among the rebels. And moreover, the participation of the zamindars and the talukdars gave it a feudal character. But the old school of historians, they deny this. They say that it was not simply a sepoy mutiny. We cannot limit it to sepoy mutiny. And in this connection, we can talk about Professor S.N. Sen, who in his book 1857 concluded that the mutiny was not simply a sepoy mutiny. According to him, a national rising does not require the participation of the whole population. Now, he says, like for instance, in America, in the revolutions of America, France, we see only an influential section of people participating in these revolutions. So, he calls the revolt of 1857 a national rising. R.C. Majumdar, another historian, he gives his arguments similar to that of S.N. Sen. And V.D. Savarkar, he calls the revolt of 1857 the first war of Indian independence. Now, attitude of the educated Bengali class. Now, the educated middle class did not support the Great Revolt of 1857. Why? Because they thought that the success of the rebels might re-establish the old social order, that is, the feudal society, in place of modern education and reforms brought by the British. They paid respect to the British and thought that the Britishers were a blessing to them. Now, the middle class, they belonged to the well-to-do family, that had been the product of colonial structure. So this may be the reason that they did not support the revolt of 1857. Now this is a very common question in Madhyamik. Normally this question, and I think this question is important for you all for this year also. So now after that we shall talk about the impact of the revolt of 1857. Now the immediate impact, what was the impact result of the revolt of 1857 was the end of the company's rule, that is the East India Company's rule in India, and the transfer of power to the British Crown. Now by the Act for the Better Government of India, August 1858, the power was transferred to the British Crown and the company's rule in India came to an end. The title of Viceroy was added to the governor, to the designation of the Governor General of India. Now, Queen Victoria, who was the then queen, she declared that there would be changes in the governmental policy of the British. They would no longer be interested in territorial expansion, and they would not interfere in the religions and customs of the Indian people. Despite all these promises, we find that these promises were not fulfilled, and the exploitation and the torture of the British government continued. Now with this, we finish off with the revolt of 1857. Now we shall go over to the age of associations. Now, the spread of Western education and the growth of patriotism and nationalism paved the way for political consciousness among the Indians. The educated middle class, they realized the need to organize political movements and to safeguard their interest. So we find in the 19th century many associations started. One of these associations, the first and the foremost, we must say, was the Banga Bhasa Prakashika Sabha, which was formed in 1836. Now, the Banga Bhasa Prakashika Sabha, it discussed matters which adversely affected the country, like the tax system. Now, despite all its efforts, the Banga Bhasha Prakashika Sabha failed. Even then, it paved the way for the formation of other political associations in India in future. Next, we shall talk about the Landholders Society or the Zamindari Association of Calcutta. Now, the first association organized with a specific political outlook in India was the Zamindari Association of Calcutta, which was established on 12th of November 1837. Now, it was attended by Radhakanta Dev, Raja Ram Mohan and many others, and later the society came to be known as the Landholders Society in 1858. Now, with what objectives was this society formed? Now, there were many objectives. I will tell you a few of them. Number one was to protect the interest of the zamindars of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Number two, to bring a change in the tax system, revenue system, in the revenue policy and the judiciary system. Another objective was they did not leave the riots to, as the riots were closely associated with the zamindars. So they involved the riots too in this society. Now the Indian Association. The Indian Association, it was founded on 26 July 1876 by Surendranath Banerjee. Now, it too had many objectives, some of which were to create a strong body of public opinion all over the country. Number two, uniting the various people of India on a common political basis, and promotion of friendly relations between the Hindus and the Muslims, and lastly, to rally the masses in the political movement of the day. Now, this question, this Indian Association is also important for you all this year. This might come. The next question is, the next topic is the Hindu Mela. Now, Nava Gopal Mitra, he established the Jatiya Mela, which later came to be known as the Hindu Mela in 1867. Now, Gaganendranath Tagore was its secretary and Nava Gopal Mitra was its assistant secretary. Now, what were the objectives of the Hindu Mela? Self-help and self-dependency were the main objectives of the Hindu Mela. Self-help, self-dependency, Atma Nirbhar. Right? Now, the Hindu Mela, it organized many fairs and displayed products, articles of Indian art and craft, which encouraged the native producers. Now, with this, we finish off with the associations. Now, we shall talk about the expression of nationalism in literary works and paintings. Now, if we look into the history of India as well as the world, we see how authors, writers, and the books have made people conscious and have contributed in spreading nationalism, patriotism. These books, in the form of novel, poetry, drama, have played important roles in arousing national consciousness among the people. Now, in this context, we shall talk about Ananda Math, which is a novel written by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee in 1882. This novel was written on the background of the famine of Bengal in 1770, and the Sannyasi Revolt. Now this hymn, the song Vande Mataram, it became the national hymn of the revolutionaries, and this song Vande Mataram was incorporated in this novel of Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. The novel provided the concept of an armed uprising and the idea of Swadeshi. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, he explained that our country is our mother. Patriotism is our religion, and serving our country is worshipping our mother. Now, the next book we shall talk about is the Vartaman Bharat, which was written by Swami Vivekananda. Now, as you already know, that Swami Vivekananda was the disciple of Ramakrishna Paramhansa. And he was a great source of inspiration to the freedom fighters of India. In Vartaman Bharat, Swami Vivekananda has talked about Indian history in a concise form. He has urged the Indians to be brave and courageous and instilled in them a feeling of pride for their mother, for their nation, for their motherland. He has explained the superiority of Oriental culture, and he told the Indians that they were no less than the West. He told the Indians to rise above the narrow limits of casteism and social discrimination, and to love the poorest of the poor. His spiritual call in his book was arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is achieved. Yani उठा जाग लक्ष्य प्राप्त नहुन्जेल नरोक भनेर उहाँको मुख्य या मन्त्र भनौं न त्यो यसमा थियो है. Then we shall talk about Gora, which is again a novel composed by Rabindranath Tagore in 1910. Now, the Gora, it dealt with the doubts regarding social, moral, and national issues that occupied the minds of the educated Bengali. Now, Rabindranath Tagore tried to promote the cause of humanism and condemned narrow-mindedness and religious obsession. Through Gora, Rabindranath Tagore explained that rebellion does not come from the outside world. In fact, it comes from within oneself. He wanted to unite races, culture, language, religion. At the end of the novel, we find Gora, who was a staunch Hindu, rising above the limitations and becoming a liberal humanist. Now, next we shall talk about Bharat Mata, which is a painting by Abanindranath Tagore, and the date is 1905. It was a painting by Abanindranath Tagore in 1905. Now, in 1905, the country was facing a lot of turmoil because of the partition issue. Now, which partition? It was the partition of Bengal, which Lord Curzon had announced. Now, this painting was done in the Japanese style, and where Bharat Mata was portrayed as the goddess of prosperity. Now, this painting was actually the picturization of the hymn Vande Mataram of Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. And this painting is on display at Victoria Memorial for public viewing. And lastly, now we shall talk about the critic of colonial society, Gaganendranath Tagore's caricature, 1867 to 1938. Now, Gaganendranath Tagore, who was he? He was the elder brother of Abanindranath Tagore, and he was a great painter. Gaganendranath Tagore was a great painter and a cartoonist. Now, through his paintings, he criticized the colonialism of the contemporary society and the Babu culture of the Western educated people. Now, he made mockery and caricature of the British rule and tried to inspire nationalism. Now, his famous cartoon is the University Machine. Now, with this I come to the end of the topic. I hope I have covered the whole chapter in short. It is very difficult to go into details because the time is very short. So I think this will help you all for your revision work. Regarding the questions in this chapter, now there are in the MCQ type questions, you all will get 4 questions from this chapter. Very short 4 questions, short answer, 4 questions again, and regarding the analytical and the essay type of questions, you all will get 1 question in this chapter. Now, this question pattern is according to the reduced syllabus, so you all can follow this question pattern and prepare yourselves accordingly. Thank you.